This is apparently the third movie by Nicole Beckwith, and when I went through her filmography, one of her previous films, Stockholm, Pennsylvania, immediately stood out to me. Because it's fairly recent, from 2015, and it stars Saoirse Ronan, and I was like, how have I not even heard about this? But then I read the plot synopsis and things started coming back to me. And I'm actually pretty sure now that I've seen that movie, but it's still all very vague. Anyway, that doesn't really matter because this one is a very, very different movie from that one. That one is, from what I recall, a pretty heavy and sort of dark movie in many ways. And this is basically a lighthearted rom-com. Sort of, but not really. If you watch the movie, you get what I mean. It feels like a rom-com, it follows a very similar formula, but it still doesn't really fulfill all the criteria. Or does it? Well, you'll just have to watch it to find out, I guess, but that's one of the things I liked about this. It kind of plays around with the ideas of what a rom-com is and plays with your expectations. But then just doesn't necessarily do what you'd think it would do and instead does something a bit different. And the basic idea here is that we follow these two people, a single man in his 40s and a woman in her 20s who he hires as his surrogate because he wants to become a father. And honestly, there isn't much more to the plot here, that's more or less it. We then of course get to know these characters as they get to know each other too. And naturally they develop a relationship of sorts because they're in constant contact with each other. But what kind of relationship? Well, that's where this movie goes off the beaten path and forges its own path, does whatever it wants to do instead of doing whatever you think it's gonna do. And as I said, I like that. It follows a clear winning formula without sticking to it religiously. And it does that to the very end too, because it chose a very interesting place to end the movie. Because on the one hand it feels like the most natural place to end it. But on the other hand, well, most movies wouldn't dare end it where it did. Most movies would feel obliged to add a bit of an epilogue to the movie, I guess you could call it, to wrap things up more neatly, to put a nice little bow on it and only then call it a day. This one though isn't really interested in any of that, it does its own thing and I very much appreciated that. And I really enjoyed this movie overall too, it's just a well-made little comedy with a good amount of heart as well. I mean, the only genuine complaint I have, and it's really more of a nitpick than a real issue, is the way Paddy Harrison's character has a tendency to break into upspeak, where you basically make every sentence sound like a question. And I do find that sort of thing to be mildly annoying, but other than that, nothing about this movie bothered me even slightly. So all in all, it's a perfectly enjoyable little movie that I don't have much more to say about. Which means I'm more or less inclined to give this one a solid 7. Boop. And yeah, I would probably recommend it if it sounds even remotely interesting to you. So you know, maybe check it out or maybe don't. After all, I'm not your dad. But hey, what are your thoughts on this? Have you seen it? Did you like it? Let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a thumbs up or sub to the channel because that would be fantastic.